In the eastern part of Burkina Faso, something unbelievable happened. A drilling team, searching for water, pulled up their equipment from 435 meters underground. But instead of water, thick black liquid burst out, oil. The engineers stood frozen. Could it really be? Tests confirmed it. And just like that, one of the poorest nations on the African continent was suddenly sitting on billions of barrels of crude oil. Within 24 hours, private jets were being prepped in Paris, London, and Houston. Western oil giants had smelled blood. In the president's office, a secure phone began to ring. The caller, a man known to many as the most dangerous player in the global oil game. The sun scorched the dry land in eastern Gorma. The drilling site was a mess of dust and tension. It had started as a routine government-funded project to locate underground water, nothing more. But Dr. Aminata Konate, head of Burkina Faso's geological survey, knew what she was holding. The black liquid on her gloves wasn't water. "Run the tests again," she told her assistant, keeping her voice calm. "And," informed the president. 12 hours later, in a cold, sealed conference room in Ouagadougou, President Ibrahim Traoré stared at the report. Around the table sat his most trusted advisors, the Defense Minister Ouedraogo, Economy Minister Kabore, and Dr. Konate. "It's not just oil," she explained. "It's premium quality, low sulfur, light crude, the kind that sells fast and sells high." Kabore leaned forward, unable to hide his excitement. "This could change everything. Our national budget is only $4 billion. This reserve could be worth over $300 billion. We could rebuild this country, roads, hospitals, universities. If we control it," interrupted Defense Minister Ouedraogo, his tone heavy. Everyone understood what he meant. In Africa, oil has rarely brought wealth to its people. Instead, it has brought coups, corruption, foreign interference, and civil war. The so-called blessing often becomes a curse. "How many people know?" the president asked. "Only us, the drill team, and a few technicians," replied Dr. Konate. "The site is still disguised as a water project, but this kind of secret won't stay hidden for long." Right then, Traoré's secure phone buzzed. It was Colonel Dio, head of national security. "Mr. President, we've intercepted several encrypted messages sent from Ouagadougou to Paris, London, and Houston. The language used clearly points to oil." The room went silent. "That's not all," Dio added. "A jet registered to Interglobal Corporation is en route from Paris. Arrival tomorrow morning." Traoré's face darkened. Interglobal was a giant, one of the most aggressive oil companies in the world, known for exploiting unstable countries, known for deals that made a few rich and left millions poor. Its CEO, Victor Durand, was infamous for using any means, political or military, to get what he wanted. The president looked at his team. "It's already begun. We're in a race now, not just to protect our oil, but to protect our future." Then his personal phone rang, a number known only to a few. "President Traoré," came a smooth voice. "Victor Durand here. I hear congratulations are in order. I'll be landing in Ouagadougou tomorrow. Let's talk about Burkina Faso's future." The next morning, word had already leaked. The streets were buzzing. Outside the presidential palace, protesters gathered with handwritten signs, "Our oil, our future, no foreign control." Inside, Traoré and his team had worked through the night. They reviewed every law, every loophole, every dirty trick Interglobal had pulled in other African nations. "They always push for a 30-70 split," said Kabore. 30% for us, 70 for them. Dressed up with promises, jobs, schools, roads. "In Nigeria, they promised power plants," said Dr. Konate. "They delivered none. Burkina Faso had found its treasure. Now the question was simple and deadly serious. Would it make the country rich or tear it apart? But the contracts had hidden clauses, Dr. Konate continued. Over time, the government's share dropped below 15%. The environmental damage, devastating, and they were never held accountable. President Traoré listened silently, his expression unreadable. "What leverage will Durand use in this meeting?" he asked. Defense Minister Ouedraogo cleared his throat. "Three kinds, Mr. President. First, financial. They'll offer large upfront payments to our treasury, knowing we're desperate. Second, political. Their influence in Western capitals can either support or destroy governments like ours. And third, he hesitated, then said what everyone was thinking. If those fail, history tells us they'll consider less diplomatic methods. The silence in the room was heavy. Everyone knew what he meant. Coups, assassinations, destabilization. These were not theories. These were patterns, and they had repeated themselves across Africa whenever leaders tried to resist Western corporate power. An aide stepped into the room. "Mr. President, Victor Durand has arrived." Traoré stood, adjusting his military uniform. "We reveal nothing. This is just a conversation. Let him think we're listening." Victor Durand entered like a man who owned the building. Tall, sharply dressed, every detail of his appearance oozed wealth and power. His handshake was firm, his smile calculated. "President Traoré, a pleasure. Your reputation for integrity precedes you." "Mr. Durand," Traoré replied, shaking his hand without emotion. "Welcome to Burkina Faso. Though I must admit, your visit is unusually fast and bypassed standard diplomatic channels." Durand smiled coolly. "In business, Mr. President, timing is everything, and I believe we both know why I'm here." Over the next hour, he laid out Interglobal's offer, a 35% share for Burkina Faso, higher than usual, he pointed out, plus a refinery, 2,000 local jobs, and an immediate $500 million signing bonus. $500 million, Durand said, leaning in your treasury, within 48 hours of signing. Imagine what you could do for your country, Mr. President. Traoré didn't flinch. When Durand finished, he simply asked, "And what if we chose to develop these resources ourselves, or partnered with others offering better terms?" A flicker of something passed across Durand's face. Irritation, maybe even a hint of threat. "With respect, Mr. President, oil extraction requires expertise and capital. Burkina Faso has neither. As for other partners," he gave a polite smile, "I would strongly advise against upsetting your traditional allies in the West." "I see," Traoré said, rising. "We'll consider Interglobal's offer, but we'll also review others. My government needs time." Durand stood, momentarily caught off guard by the abrupt end. "These are time-sensitive opportunities. Mr. President, the market moves quickly. I had hoped for a preliminary agreement today." "Mr. Durand," Traoré replied calmly, "Burkina Faso has waited centuries for its resources to benefit its people. We can afford a few more weeks to get it right." Durand left with his usual grace, but something in his demeanor had shifted. In his limousine, he made a call. The direct approach didn't work, he said coldly. "Move to Plan B." In the days that followed, the pressure began. The IMF and World Bank raised sudden concerns about Burkina Faso's debt. Western newspapers began publishing editorials questioning Traoré's leadership and hinting at instability. French diplomats became distant, and Colonel Dio's intelligence unit intercepted large, unexplained money transfers to the accounts of certain military officers and government officials. It was all too familiar. The setup for a coup in an emergency. Meeting, President Traoré addressed his advisors. "We can't match Interglobal's money. We can't match their political reach. But we have 3 things they don't expect." He pointed to a map of Africa on the wall. "First, regional solidarity. I've spoken privately with leaders in other African countries who've faced this. We're building a united front. Second, transparency. Tomorrow I will speak directly to our people. I will tell them the truth. About the oil, about Interglobal, about the pressure we're facing. An informed nation is harder to manipulate." Defense. Minister Ouedraogo looked concerned. "And the third, Mr. President?" Traoré smiled. "The third is that they think we're alone. They don't know about our new partners." The next morning, Ibrahim Traoré spoke directly to the nation in a televised address, also streamed online across the continent. "My fellow Burkinabe," he began, "today I bring you news that could reshape our destiny. We have discovered large oil reserves in the east of our country." He explained the discovery, the international attention, and Interglobal's proposal. "For too long, our natural wealth has enriched others, while our people have stayed poor. That will not happen again. This oil belongs to you, the people of Burkina Faso. It will build your schools, your hospitals, and your future. The response was electric. People flooded the streets, not in protest, but in celebration. Social media across West Africa erupted with the hashtag Our Oil, Our Future. From remote villages to the heart of Ouagadougou, the message was clear. Burkina Faso was done being exploited. Representatives from Burkina Faso were in talks with executives from China's National Petroleum Corporation and India's Oil and Natural Gas Corporation. Unlike Western oil giants, these Eastern companies were open to letting Burkina Faso keep majority ownership and claim a larger share of the profits. In a world where oil was becoming harder to secure, the East was willing to play ball on Africa's terms. In Paris, Victor Duran watched the news in disbelief. Everything he had orchestrated was falling apart. The African Solidarity Campaign had made it politically impossible for Western governments to apply open pressure. The public's demand for transparency had killed any hope of quietly undermining Burkina Faso's leadership. And now, to add insult to injury, the Chinese and Indians were about to snatch the oil deal right from under Interglobal's nose. This is unacceptable, Durand snapped at his inner circle, strategists and former spies. If Traoré signs with the Chinese or Indians, it sets a dangerous precedent. Other African nations will follow. We need to act aggressively. His security chief, a former French intelligence officer, slid a folder across the table. We've identified a few military officers still loyal to us. General Kabore, in particular, is frustrated with Traoré's leadership. Durand didn't hesitate. How fast can we move? 72 hours, but a coup right now could backfire. We're out of time, Durand said coldly. Proceed. What Durand didn't know was that his encrypted communications had already been compromised. For weeks, Burkina Faso's upgraded intelligence unit, quietly supported by allied nations, had been intercepting everything. Colonel Dio placed a transcript on President Traoré's desk. They're planning a military action within 3 days. Kabore is their inside man. Is he under surveillance? Traoré asked. Yes. He met with an interglobal contact just yesterday. Good, said Traoré. We'll make our move, but not against Kabore. Not yet. We'll hit, something Durand values even more. Meanwhile, at Interglobal's London headquarters, panic erupted. The company's stock had crashed 15% in a single day after anonymous sources leaked explosive reports. Headlines screamed of environmental crimes, backroom deals, and political sabotage in Africa. Even worse, whistleblower sites had published internal documents exposing Interglobal's bribery and collusion with intelligence services in Nigeria, and Chad shareholders were livid. Board members demanded answers. Durand was cornered, and he knew it. Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré summoned General Kabore for a private meeting. You've been speaking with Interglobal, Traoré said calmly, placing photographs on the table. They showed Kabore shaking, hands with known agents. Kabore didn't flinch. Is talking to foreign businessmen now considered treason? No, said Traoré. But plotting a coup? Absolutely. He added a transcript of intercepted conversations. Kabore turned pale. This is a setup, fabricated. What you've done could get you executed, Traoré interrupted. But that's not why you're here. He leaned in. I want you to keep talking to them. Tell them what they want to hear. Take their money, accept their weapons, and feed them exactly what we tell you. Kabore paused. He understood. You want me to be a double agent. I'm offering you redemption, Traoré said. Serve your country or face the consequences. Kabore nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? The trap was set. Over the next week, Kabore played his role. He told Interglobal that support for the coup was growing, that Traoré was days away from signing with the Chinese, and that security around the presidential palace was thinning. Durand, now desperate, pushed all his chips in. More money, more weapons, and private military contractors poured into Burkina Faso. But every move was tracked, every conversation recorded. The weapons? Swapped with duds. The contractors? Monitored. The money? Traced, exposing a full map of corruption inside the government and military. On the night of the coup, Traoré wasn't at the palace. He was at a secure command center, surrounded by loyal forces. "All units in position, Mr. President," Colonel Dio reported. They watched live feeds as coup forces moved, but nothing went as planned. Their guns didn't fire, backup forces never arrived, and everywhere they turned, they found loyalist soldiers already waiting. The coup collapsed. In hours, with barely a shot fired, dozens were arrested, including interglobal operatives caught in the act. 2 days later, President Traoré stood at the United Nations General Assembly. The hall was packed. What started as a simple oil deal had become a global scandal. "Distinguished representatives," Traoré began, his voice strong. "I stand before you not just as the president of Burkina Faso, but as the voice of every nation whose sovereignty has been trampled in the name of profit." And the world listened. The fallout from Interglobal's failed coup was swift and devastating. Concrete evidence now linked the company and several Western intelligence agencies directly to the plot. Internal documents, banking records, intercepted communications. It was all there, and it left no room for doubt. For too long, President Ibrahim Traoré told the packed UN General Assembly, "The story has been that African nations can't manage their own resources, that we need foreign corporations who take most of the profits, while we're left with pollution, poverty, and political chaos." Around the room, giant screens lit up, displaying explosive documents, memos from Interglobal, bank transfers, secret emails between oil executives and spies. It was undeniable. The truth was out. "This evidence," Traoré said firmly, "has been submitted to international prosecutors. But justice for the past is only the beginning. Today, I propose a new way forward." He then unveiled the Ouagadougou Principles, a bold new framework for resource development that demanded majority local ownership, strict environmental protection, full revenue transparency, mandatory transfer of technical knowledge to local workers. "Burkina Faso will develop its oil according to these principles," Traoré declared. "We welcome partnerships, but only with those who respect our terms." To the surprise of many, representatives from China, India, Brazil, and even some European nations nodded in agreement. They had already signed memoranda of understanding under this new model. "The era of resource colonialism is over," Traoré concluded, his voice rising. "Not just for Burkina Faso, but for every nation whose wealth has been plundered in silence. We extend our hand in partnership, but we will no longer surrender our birthright." The room erupted in applause. Even delegates from Western-aligned countries knew the tide was turning. Within days, Interglobal collapsed. Its stock price tanked. International investigations piled up. CEO Victor Durand resigned under pressure and was later charged for orchestrating illegal operations across Africa. 6 months later, Traoré stood under the hot sun at an oil drilling site in eastern Burkina Faso. What had started as a basic water survey had become a world-class petroleum project led by Burkina engineers, supported by international partners who had embraced the Ouagadougou Principles. The first phase was ahead of schedule. More importantly, Burkina citizens were being trained at every level, from extraction to refining. Within a decade, the country would run its oil industry independently. Nearby, construction was underway for a new technical university focused on petroleum engineering and environmental science. It was funded entirely by oil revenue. "Mr. President," said Dr. Konité, the new Minister of Natural Resources, "production has exceeded expectations. Shipments begin next month." "And the revenue distribution?" Traoré asked. Dr. Konité smiled. "As per the new constitution, 30% goes to infrastructure, 25% to education and healthcare, 20% to the Sovereign Wealth Fund, 15% to environmental cleanup, and 10% goes directly to citizens through a universal basic dividend." This system, approved in a nationwide referendum, ensured that every Burkinabe would benefit from the oil discovery. Not just a privileged elite. The war over black gold had not been won with bullets, but with strategy, solidarity, and transparency. Burkina Faso had claimed not only its resources, but also its future. As Traoré prepared to leave, a young woman approached him. She wore a hard hat and overalls, grease on her hands. "Mr. President," she said shyly, "I just wanted to thank you. I'm from a village nearby. Before the oil was discovered, my only hope was to leave Burkina Faso to find work. Now, I'm helping build our future." Traoré smiled. "The oil under our soil is valuable," he said. "But the real wealth of Burkina Faso has always been its people." Across the continent, African leaders were watching closely. For decades, they had feared the so-called resource curse, where natural wealth brought only misery. But Burkina Faso had proven something powerful. That curse could be broken, and in corporate boardrooms around the world, executives were being forced to reckon with a new reality. The old playbook, exploit, manipulate, extract, was no longer working. Countries like Burkina Faso had awakened. They were no longer begging for a seat at the table. They were building their own. The Black Gold War was over. But its message would echo across Africa for years to come. A new age had begun.